we have three major, what we call degree granting campuses. And what this means is that you can do your entire NYU degree in New York, in Abu Dhabi, as you can see on the slide in the middle, or in Shanghai, China, as you can see on the slide up on the right. And these are not exchange programs. We have three fully equipped degree granting campuses in those cities. And we really wanted to see what was out there in the world and help our students discover what's going on in the world where they are, and not just in a book or on a screen. And that was really important to us. So something to bear in mind is that when you're a part of NYU, you're part of this network. If you apply to us, you will choose your campus of preference. So we use a system called the Common Application, which some of you may have heard of, and I'll get back to that towards the end of our talk. And if you have any questions about any tips or advice for applying, please feel free to ask them as well in the Q&A box. Once you've chosen your campus, you may also need to go a bit deeper and choose your school or area of study. So at NYU, across the board, we have about 240 areas of study. So really, really, really big choices you can have here. And we operate under the liberal arts model. So for those who are not super familiar with this, it's very, very different than what you can find in the UK or across Europe, where, you know, you apply to a topic, you study that topic for 3 years, and you move on with your life. Under the liberal arts sort of system of education, you will not necessarily need to know exactly what it is that you want to study when you start. And I think that's a very, very unique, in a sense, and specific aspect of education in North America, is to be able to do this. So our students who apply to the Shanghai campus, to the Abu Dhabi campus, or to the New York College of Arts and Science campus can apply not knowing what they want to do, because they'll have about 2 years to make a decision and choose their major. The major will become their area of expertise. They can also choose a minor, which will be a secondary area of expertise. And so what this allows them to do is to mature, to grow, to learn more about themselves and what challenges them and what they enjoy doing. And they can take classes and electives throughout those different, completely different topics. Like we have people at the College of Arts and Science who will do biology, computer science, and public policy, and study different things to try to figure out what it is that makes them tick. And that's really fantastic to be able to do that across our campuses. In New York, we are divided into 10 different schools. So the major school in New York is called the College of Arts and Science, which I just mentioned, and that's CAS. This is where you have more of an, I want to say, traditional university experience with a wide array of topics that you can choose. Very, very, pretty much anything you can think of, from anthropology to biology to French to social studies and so on. So quite a wide array of sciences and arts related and humanities related topics as well. But we also have 9 other schools that are more professionally focused. And some of you may have heard of Stern, or School of Business, Tisch, or School of the Arts, Steinhardt, which is a bit of a mix between a conservatory and education school. We also have Tandon, a School of Engineering that has amazing campus located in Brooklyn. And I would say my favorite, which is Gallatin. And Gallatin is a school that's very tiny, but allows the students to create their own major. So this isn't for people who are undecided, who don't know what to do. This is for students who have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 interests that they want to merge, and they want to create something that's unique to them. And so for those students that are very passionate about completely different areas, this is an opportunity to really tailor your study to your own needs. And that's really, really amazing opportunity at Gallatin. So in New York, across those different schools, when you apply, you'll have to make a choice. If you know you're applying to Stern because you want to study finance, you'll apply to Stern specifically. Same for Tisch if you want to do dance or music at Steinhardt and so on. So it's a little bit more complicated in terms of the application with the New York campus. By the way, we are very much a school that's in the city. We have no walls. We call ourselves a campus without walls, because if any of you have been to New York before for work or on holidays, and you've gone down Fifth Avenue and you've seen Washington Square Park, it has a big arch that looks like the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, and a big fountain. If you've been there, basically you've been to NYU, because about 13 blocks around from this area, this is where we are. This is our campus. And so this is a campus, this is an experience for students who will find themselves being quite independent, being very resilient, excited by the world around them, and people who are willing to challenge themselves, because it is intense and it's not for everyone. You know, if you see those experiences on TV about a small campus in a very leafy town where there's about 500 people and everything is centered around the school, that's not NYU. We're very much an urban environment, an urban campus. And so you need to make sure that you know that this is right for a particular student. This idea of fit is super important, and we can talk about this a bit later in the conversation. But if you look to the middle of the slide in Abu Dhabi, it's weirdly enough a much more American experience in the Middle East that our students can have in the United Arab Emirates. This is my campus of choice. I have to say I work for the global admissions team as well as the NYU Abu Dhabi team in terms of admissions. I've lived on campus for 2 months. I really, really, really love this place. We are located on Saadiyat Island, which is the cultural island where the Louvre Museum is as well. And the campus is very self-contained. So all of our students will live and work and research and study on campus. So very much an American experience in a completely different part of the world. We offer about 24 different majors, 25 now this year at NYU Abu Dhabi. And it's a much smaller campus. So we're looking at about 13 to 1400 students. So much, much smaller environment, mostly undergraduates, incredible resources that are funded by the local government to support the development of a different type of education. And we have research labs, an MRI machine, 3 different theaters. We have a dance studio, music performance studio, a wood workshop. Like, it's completely insane what our students can do in Abu Dhabi and what they have access to. This is also a school that is incredibly selective. So we're on par with Harvard and Stanford in terms of the selectivity criteria at Abu Dhabi, because it's a smaller campus and also because we can meet financial needs of our students. So this is very different for Shanghai and New York, but in Abu Dhabi, students, once they are selected, 100% of their needs will be met. So let's imagine that you and your family can afford 50% of your studies. That's great, we'll give you the rest. But if you can afford 5%, if you're an Abu Dhabi selected student, could get up to 95 or even 100% of scholarship support. And so that is incredibly generous, but also that means that this school is incredibly selective. A slightly different experience is our newest campus. So Abu Dhabi was created about 10 years ago, and Shanghai about 6 years ago. So I've also spent some time on our Pudong campus in Shanghai, and it's such a cool place to be. If you're interested in topics, especially focusing around STEM, so business, science, economics, but also some humanities, we have about 19 different areas of study that you can choose at NYU Shanghai. And it's really cool because you get 2 degrees. You get a Chinese accredited degree and you get the NYU American degree. So very, very cool experience where you're placed in an environment where half the student body will be from 50 or 60 different nationalities, and the other half will come from mainland China. So all of our international students will have a roommate from China in their first year, and we expect them to be able to speak some Mandarin when they graduate. You don't need to speak Mandarin to start with, but we'll expect them to have a certain level of proficiency, to be interested in the world around them, and to understand what it is that is happening within this part of the world. And so very, very cool experience. A bit of a smaller campus, but we are building a new one right now. So I'm assuming it's going to be ready probably, of course, this year has been a bit different, but probably by the end of 2021 or maybe 2022. So looking to expand operations in China. And this idea of seeing what's happening in the rest of the world is really important to us. As you can see on this slide, we have our 3 main campuses, but we also have 11 study away sites. Los Angeles is missing, it's that new, so it's not even on the map yet. But we have 11 study away sites across the world that are all NYU operated. So my office is in the London center, but we have centers in Accra, we have centers in Buenos Aires, in Sydney, in DC. So our NYU students can take up to 1, sometimes 2, sometimes they have 3 experiences abroad while they study at NYU. So let's imagine you're a New York student, but you really, really want to study parts of Italian art. You can go and study in Florence, or you could go and study in Prague if you're interested in music, or London has amazing courses across the board, especially around math and business and history and literature. But you could also decide to brush up on your Spanish and go to Buenos Aires for a term. So our students really have this opportunity to be an NYU student somewhere else. And literally, I've been to quite a few of those sites now, and you can use your card and just like open doors and print, and you order books from the library. Like you're not on an exchange program where people look at you differently. You are an NYU student at all of these sites. And this is the mindset that we have, I think, in this institution. And that's the type of people that we're looking for, is young students who are very conscious of the world around them. Obviously, it's a little bit different this year, and I'll talk about this in a second, but we want them to be open to the world, to be willing to have their opinion and fight for them, but also to be open-minded at being challenged. And that's very important. We want our students to engage in conversation with their peers, to engage in conversation with our faculty members, who are absolutely amazing people who consult and research, publish, and are there to bring that real life experience in the classroom so that they can have those sometimes difficult conversations and they can move things along. It's not just about being taught at, it's about being able to see what's going on in the real world and use that to sort of go further in your learning. And that's very important to us. So these are the type of students that we're looking for, people who are quite proactive, people who, enjoy progress and challenging the status quo. And that's something that really, really matters to us very, very much. Finally, I want to not take too much of your time because I want to open up to Q&A, but I like this slide. It's very simple and it just has 4 words on it, but this is really what we aim to achieve at NYU. We want our students to be comfortable anywhere. And I think this anywhere is pretty obvious from the previous 2 slides, that we want students to be open to the rest of the world. But we want them also to have an incredible academic experience. So we give students an enormous amount of support, especially in their first year, and specifically as well if they are international students. We have a team that's dedicated to make their transition into American education comfortable. And we want them to be able to support themselves as well. So it's not hand-holding, it's giving you the right tools and the right skills so that you're able to be a strong student and to have a good experience. So this idea of helping our students succeed is really, really important to us. And that comes with having an academic advisor, that comes with having, peer support from, different years, as well as our students being able to find their home and find their community, oftentimes in student clubs. We have an enormous amount of student clubs in all of our campuses, lots of student activities as well on our study away sites, and we want people to be able to find their family away from home, because it's not always easy, when you're 17, 18, 19, and you're shipping to the other part of the world, and we want you to be successful and to feel that you're supported. But we also want you to be successful everywhere, not just when you're at NYU, but support you through your journey. So we have amazing career centers across our 3 main campuses, especially in New York, the Wasserman Center. So in a previous life, I actually used to go to Wasserman Center to enroll students into graduate programs, so I know what it's like on the other side as a recruiter. And the support and the generous time and effort that the staff and the peers who work there give to our students is really, really valuable. So they're there to help you navigate what it's like to apply to graduate school, what it's like to find an internship, what it's like to find a job. And it hopefully is your dream job, but maybe it's a step up. Maybe it's something to take you somewhere. Figuring out who you should apply to, who you should connect with, and how, especially. And even just logistics, how to do your CV, how to interview, all of these little elements that really, as a young professional, you need to start developing. And that happens when you are at NYU, but also when you become a former student of the school. So we take care of our alumni around the world very well as well. And we have alumni teams that are dedicated to support them. This year, I just went to the first London alumni conference. It was absolutely jam-packed house. This was before COVID. So it was really incredible to see everyone from completely different years, completely different schools and programs at NYU all get together and discuss what's going on in the world, how they can support each other, and how they can, in a sense, sort of keep progressing within their relationship to NYU, but also their relationships to each other. So this idea that our students, when they graduate, will be comfortable anywhere and successful everywhere is really important to us. Finally, I just want to leave you with my contact details, and I do mean this. Do send me an email if you have any questions about applying to NYU. I think a lot of people think that they cannot, that they really shouldn't put themselves on the radar in case they think they have a silly question, or that they can't be open with admissions officers. Maybe in your country it's not being done, and that is okay. But for us, I want to read better applications. It's in my interest to help you and advise you through this process. As I mentioned before, we operate under the common application at NYU, and this is something that about almost 900 schools do in the US, but not every school. So if you are interested in applying to maybe schools in California or Texas, they may operate under a different system. So it's very, very useful for you, and I would say important that you know exactly how to apply. Our deadlines are very different as well. So we have 3 different types of deadlines. We have November 1st, January 1st, and January 5th. November 1st is what we call early decision 1. It means that students who are ready apply early, and it's a binding agreement. It means that when you're selected to go to NYU, you will have to go to NYU. You cannot go to any other school in the US. We have an early decision 2, which is January 1st, and that's the same process. And January 5th is our regular decision. What this means is that students can apply to as many schools as they want in the US. It's not like UCAS, so you can do only 5 schools. It's a larger pool that you can tap into. And once you get the results, you can make your decision and decide which school you want to go to. But this is much earlier on than the UCAS process, or even process across Europe. So it's really important that you know when you apply to an American school what's happening. And what are the elements that are needed within your application as well? I mean, there's obviously biographical elements, there's transcripts and consular recommendations and so on, which your school should support you with. And then there's testing. So some of you will have heard about the SAT and the ACT, and it's like, those, terrible 3-letter words that go around, and that, especially for international students, if you haven't prepped for them for a long time, you might not quite know what you're getting into. So one of the positive aspects of the COVID-19 crisis, in a way, is that many schools, including NYU, have gone what we call test optional for this coming admissions year. What this means is that if for physical reasons you've not been able to take the ACT or the SAT because there's no test centers, there's no test dates for obvious reasons, then you will not be penalized at all if you apply without testing. So for many years, NYU has been what we call test flexible, meaning that if you apply, say, with your A-levels or your IB or your Abitur or your French bac and so on, there's a lot of different ones, national exams you can choose from. We've actually been open already to letting students apply without ACT or ACT. This year, it's full on. So anyone, even those who are in the American high school system, will be able to do this. And many schools have done that. Not all schools, but many, many schools have done that to sort of facilitate the process for their students. So if your student is applying this year, this is what something important to remember as well. In terms of the application as well, I would say if you have any questions or if you want some advice, I would recommend Googling Meet NYU. It's basically our blog hub where we give a lot of advice to prospective students. And so I've actually written quite a few posts for Meet NYU, including 2 that are helping you writing your essays. So that's a very important thing because it's a very different process than a UCAS process. So if that's something that you want advice on, you Google Meet NYU, and when you're on the platform, just Google essays and these posts will come up and it'll give you a lot of advice about this. Or you can just send me an email, as you can see on the slide. Okay, I think I went way over time, so I'm going to keep it open for questions. And thank you very much for listening to us, and I hope this was helpful. And now I'm happy to take Q&A.
Lisa, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Would you like me to stop sharing my screen? Just a bit of housekeeping. Or do you want me to keep it up? It doesn't matter to me. It's whatever.
Lisa, we had one question from one of the participants, viewers. How will the new visa regulations announce how will they help students whose courses are now online? What's going to happen? I was speaking to a student from Harvard yesterday, and she says that she will no longer be able to stay in the US beyond her normal tourist visa because the courses are online next year.
Yeah, it's quite a complicated process, and I'm not going to go into this because I'm not a visa expert. Unfortunately, this lies with our Office of Global Services in New York, and they're the ones that are monitoring the situation quite closely. The one thing I should say is that this student or any student that is in this situation should really engage with their school and their visa office to keep in touch with what's going on. Because in the industry, what we see is that every day there's something new that comes up. They announce something and then it's overturned the next day. So it's such a situation that's in flux that it's very difficult for us to, at least in terms of admissions professionals, to be able to advise you. That has to come from the visa office in your school. Okay. I would say that a large number of schools in the US have been lobbying the federal government to try to make sure that this doesn't happen and that students are able to stay in the US. I think schools are very, very keen on making, going around and circling about to find ways to keep students engaged in the process. But it's a very, very volatile situation that's changing on a daily basis. So the best thing the student can do is, again, to keep in touch and get as up-to-date the information as they can, and assess the situation as it comes up. I'm sorry I don't have an actual answer.
That's very helpful. Thank you. We had one more pre-event question, which was, will interviews and SAT, ACT be cancelled? You've already mentioned the SAT, ACT. I mean, I'd just like to say that you're absolutely sure that there's no disadvantage that will ensue from not doing ACTs, SATs. Yeah. If you're competing against a candidate who has got really good scores and you haven't got any scores at all, that's not going to make any impact.
So there's two things here. There's what other schools might do, and then there's what NYU does. Yeah. So it's really important, regardless of whatever school you're applying to, that you know exactly what they're doing. So most schools will have COVID-19 related updated pages on their website. So bookmark this, keep an eye on that, talk to the counselors, talk to us to really make sure you have as up-to-date information as you can. In terms of what NYU is doing, before this whole situation, we were already test flexible. What that meant was that you could apply with your SAT or ACT, which was perfectly fine, or you could apply with a wide array of recognized equivalent national exams. So that could be the International Baccalaureate, the IB, the French Bac, the A-levels, the Abitur, exams from West Africa, exams from the Caribbean, exams from Korea. I mean, so many different countries. It's all on our website, listed country by country, which exams we can accept. And what that meant is that already you didn't have to take the other tests. So for instance, let me give you an example for context. If I had a student that had a really strong IB prediction, very, very high grades, like good mix of 7s and 6s, and they wanted to apply just with their prediction. And they also took the SAT, but it was kind of an average score. Our recommendation is always just apply with the IB. I do not need your SAT. It's not going to help you unless it's the best score that's ever been known to man. It's not necessarily going to help you get there. Yeah. So our philosophy was already to say, apply with what's the best demonstration of your actual ability. This has not changed for this year, meaning, yes, great. If you have taken the SAT and you're super happy with your score, it's one more element you can add, but it's not needed. And if our students apply without taking the tests, we completely understand that 99% of cases is going to be because they physically could not take the test. We will not disadvantage them at all. Excellent. And we have so many applications. We don't compare students one by one. We don't go, this guy looks like that girl, and you know what? He has like 10 points more on the SAT. So yeah, it doesn't work like this at all. My God, like 85,000 applications, we would not be able to do this.
And just to qualify, you mentioned IB predictions.
Yes.
You'll also look at A-level predictions.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you'd also look at GCSE grades.
Yes, that's correct. So GCSE grades or O-levels, because I know some countries do the O-levels, as well as AS if they've taken them, but they don't have to. And A-level predictions, 100% absolutely.
And do you do alumni interviews? I think
we do not. So again, 85,000 applications. We're unfortunately not able to do this.
Because that was part of the question she said.
Yeah, exactly. So it really varies. So I would say some schools in the US will do interviews systematically, and especially if you have a much smaller pool of applicants. Some schools will do interviews for people that they really want to find out a bit more about. some schools don't do them at all. The only time where you can have a different point of contact in admissions for NYU is if you're applying to an artistic program. So let's say you're applying for music or dance or theater drama, performance, all those programs, you may have to submit a portfolio or you may have to audition. And that is in itself, the audition, a form of interview. So that's the only time where you can have that contact. And we used to do auditions online via Skype or whatever platform they want to use before. So that's not going to change this year. Probably the vast majority of auditions for schools like Tisch or Steinhardt will be online, and that's perfectly fine.
Okay, great, brilliant. So can we go over to Jamie now? Jamie?
Yeah, great.
Great young Yale protege. So I'm sure you've got some really interesting questions to start conversing with Lisa, so off you go. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, first off, I have to say, Lisa, your presentation made me wish that I could apply to NYU and do it all over again. I mean, it's just amazing.
Programs, master's degrees, MBAs, we do it.
There's still time. Charles, it's been a great run. Because it's just the wealth of resources and the opportunities are so exciting. Something I wanted to just address in the beginning was something we mentioned when we talked a few days ago about how NYU's kind of leveraging its global outreach and its multiple campuses to deal with the COVID crisis in a really wonderful but unique way. And I know that because the situation is so, as you said, in flux, but also varied from school to school, it's hard to make any sweeping generalizations about the sector as a whole. But could you just talk briefly about what NYU's doing to kind of, at least for this upcoming fall, deal with the current situation?
Of course. But before I go into NYU, I would say for the sector as a whole, as you mentioned, there's a lot being done. And I think the vast majority of schools across the US, we talk all the time and we share information. They're really, really proactive into trying to find the best solutions for their students. I mean, this is an industry that is very customer-centric. We want our students to succeed, so we want to put things in place that are going to support them through this process. But we're also very conscious that we don't want to put anybody at risk, that we have to take care of staff or faculty or the students themselves. And it's sometimes creating issues that are hard to solve, but that is the case in any industry at this point. So it's something that sometimes is complicated and difficult to understand, but we're, every student that's in the situation of starting or continuing their education in 2020 is thinking, but this is my issue, but we're dealing with thousands of people on the other side. So this is when it can be quite difficult sometimes, and we sometimes have to make difficult decisions. But in terms of NYU, as you mentioned, we have a strong network. And we've been incredibly lucky that we found platforms to be able to be flexible and offer a lot of alternatives to our students. So weirdly enough, I don't know if it's a blessing in disguise, but because we have a campus in Shanghai, we were able to experience the whole confinement and COVID-19 situation way before most of our colleagues in the US, because our Shanghai campus went through it, started in December and early January. They were already going through the changes. So we already were learning from them and put a lot of things in place to help us cope with the situation. So what we're offering for this coming fall, and again, whether it's extended to the spring term, I cannot tell you because I don't have a crystal ball, and unfortunately things are changing so quickly. But what we're putting in place is a flexible program that will allow some students to take classes online, some students to take classes in person with lots and lots and lots of precautions, and some students to do a program that we call Go Local. And the idea of Go Local is, let's say you are a student from China who applied to and were selected to study at Tandon School of Engineering in Brooklyn. For a variety of reasons, COVID-related, visa-related, timing, you might not be able to start in New York, but you might be able to start in Shanghai. And so we're opened up some of our campuses in Abu Dhabi, across the different cities that we have. As you can remember from that map that I had earlier, we've opened up some of those centers that may have different situations than the situation in the US, to allow some students to connect with other students locally, to also have courses that will be in their time zones, because it sounds crazy, but if you're in Australia and you have to take courses in New York, it's not super easy. So to be able to have those connections and to go through this Go Local program. So we have had quite a few deferral requests, but strangely enough, maybe not as much as you might think. we cannot grant all deferral requests to all students, unfortunately. So a lot of students will be starting with us in the fall and continuing with us in the fall. And so we think that by offering this flexibility, hopefully they'll have a good experience. It won't be the same. It won't be the same as being on campus, but then again, that is the same for everyone in life. I've been working from home since mid-March. I haven't seen my colleagues outside of a screen since mid-March. You know, it is how it is. And unfortunately, I think by being flexible, we won't create a situation that it will go worse. We'll create a situation that everybody, hopefully by the spring, will be safe in a safe position to come back to school physically. At least that's what I'm crossing my fingers for.
Well, it's great. I mean, we just on this call, I know we have registrants from the UK, India, Turkey, Hong Kong, Cyprus, China, Portugal, USA, and UAE. So wow. I think it's very important that, like, you know, the international families understand that maybe if you're worried about sending your kid to America or can't actually physically send your kid to America in the upcoming fall, the NYU sort of has, and maybe other schools that have those resources are trying to give students an opportunity to not necessarily just do the whole thing from home, but actually take in-person classes in their home country and then transition, you know, in the spring or the next year. But as you said, I guess the best resource is to really get in touch with that specific school because it varies.
100%. And you'll be surprised what they've been able to do. Like, I know that Teach Drama is going fully online for the fall, which is crazy, but I've seen what they can do in drama in the spring. And I know, for instance, in our London Center, they did their end of year play on Zoom, and all the actors were on the same call, and they were able to sort of showcase what they've learned and what they did. And I'm still amazed that they can do acting, research, music on virtual platforms. It's completely crazy, but they're so clever and they're so adaptable and agile that they're really able to get a good experience.
Well, Charles, just stop me. I have a couple more questions. Stop me if I'm going over, and we want to make sure we have time to hit, you know, students if they've messaged in. But one thing I wanted to just address first was something you said, that it's not about getting more applications, because obviously NYU is already inundated with people who want to go, but better applications. Yeah. And since I work with students who want to make their application the best that they can be, you know, what are the ways in which some applications that you read maybe fall short of presenting students as well as they could, or how could international students, what are the kind of things that international students miss when they're trying to present themselves for a US system, and how could they maybe address that?
I guess just to add to that, just cutting straight to the chase, Lisa, what makes that winning application? If you're down to two, which one are you going to select and why? What's the
No, that's fair. That's completely fair. I think there's so many different factors that come into play that there's no like one model, like, and that's what's hard, because a lot of people want hard figures and say, okay, if I fit in this bucket, am I in? It's like, it doesn't quite work that way. It's more of a holistic process, and that's why it's so difficult. I would say that the main thing that international students tend to forget is that they look at a list of like the 10 or 15 best schools, and they're like, I only want to apply to these schools. Sure. Because maybe in their country there's only 30 universities, and if you apply to the first 10 ones, this is good. But in the US, you're looking at thousands of schools. So really think about rankings and think about reputation very much relative to the size and the scope and the quality of the education in the US. We're very lucky, in most of the rankings we're quite high up, but there are schools that might be ranked 100, but they'll still be very, very good at something very specific. So go beyond this, really open yourself up beyond the sort of Ivy League to really find what's the best fit for you, because this idea of fit is something that most international students tend to forget. It's not just about academics, although they play a big part. It's certainly not about the topic that you want to study, because you can apply undecided to most US colleges. So it doesn't really matter if you want to do biology or if you want to do politics. It doesn't matter to us. What matters is, are you going to be a good student on our campus? What are you going to bring us? Are we going to be able to help you grow and thrive? Are you the right fit? And you can only do this if you do a lot of research. It's quite time consuming. But go to all the schools' websites, do virtual tours, do campus tours if you can eventually. Talk to students, talk to alumni, talk to staff, get a feel for the place. Understand who are the faculty teaching, what are the research opportunities, what size is this school, what kind of career support do they give, where are they located, do I want to be in a small town, do I want to be in a big town, do I want to be in Chicago on a coast? These are all very different elements that will help you understand okay, the reasons why I want to go there is this, and this. And the reason why I think I would be a good fit is because I bring this to the table. Strong academics, a sense of being proactive and intellectually curious, a sense of being open to the world. Maybe you've done work within your community and you want to bring that on. Maybe you're a musician, maybe you're a sports person and you want to find a school that gives sports scholarships. Not NYU, sadly, but there are plenty out there. So you need to really, really do a vast amount of research to apply to the right schools, because looking at the top 20 and applying to all of these schools, you're putting poor applications, because you'll copy and paste the same essays, you'll answer it the same way. You won't have any understanding of why you're doing this, because applying to Harvard, Stanford, NYU, Yale, University of Chicago are very, very different institutions.
So it's really important, sorry to interrupt, it's really important to demonstrate on the application that you've done that research.
100%. Like in the application for us, we have a personal statement, which is an essay that will go to all the schools that you're applying to under the common application. So that should not be school specific. It should be about you, who you are and why you're a great personality and you could be a good fit for us. But there is also why and why you, excuse me.
I was just saying, and importantly, as opposed to like a UCAS statement, this personal statement is about your personality and what you bring as a human, and not
that is correct.
To study this subject, because that's a mistake a lot of international students make.
Yeah, 100%. Do not talk about engineering or robotics or linguistics for like 3 pages. This is not what this is about. The personal statement in the application, especially on the Common App, is really about yourself as a person. It's maybe about something that happened to you and how you reacted to it. It's about a success, it's about a failure, it's about something you want to change in the world, or you've changed about yourself. It's about growth, it's about who you are as a person. And that's very different from an essay for UCAS, which usually is focused on the topic you want to study. Again, going back to this idea that you could apply undecided, and that is okay. But on top of this, we also, specifically for NYU, have a question called Why NYU? And this is where all this research you've done in the past is going to be demonstrated, because this is where you say, you know what, I want to apply to NYU Abu Dhabi because I know they have this professor in this lab and I want to do research with them and I want to take this elective and I want to be in this part of the world for that reason. And this is where you tell us what you came across, that not only tell us that you understand what you're getting into, so you understand we're a good fit for you, but through this, we understand that you are a good fit for us as well. So it works both ways. And this idea of fit is often forgotten because people think, well, I need to have a 1580 SAT and I'm in. Oh no, we say no to people who have 1580 SATs all the time if the rest of the application is not strong enough. And that's really important. Of course, there is an academic strength that needs to be there. This is a competitive institution and we will want to see that you can cope in the classroom. So we want to see some demonstration of academic excellence, but it goes beyond that. And that's really, really, really important to remember, because again, what this means is that this is a lengthy process. This is a process that requires work, homework. Yes, I said the H word. And the process that really requires you to think about it in advance, to prepare, to talk to counselors in your school that will support that process. You're not doing that by yourself. You need to involve other people into this. And this is complicated. And especially if you're applying to 5, 10, 15 schools, which technically you can, although I wouldn't recommend going beyond 10, but it's going to take a lot of time to figure out what is out there for you. And again, to identify what are the specific elements that make you keen to join a specific school.
This is really fascinating, because I haven't heard anyone in 20 years put such emphasis on the preparation. And I think this is extremely useful that you've been just really so forthcoming about this. Can you tell us about the reference? Because
yes,
the reference one writes to the school for a British university application, I'm presuming won't quite cut it for an American university. And a lot of teachers at British schools, they don't have such experience in sending off references to America.
Absolutely. So I do a lot of work actually with British counselors, so through Education USA, as well as just in person, like sort of knowing them. So it depends on what school you're going to. So there are some schools in the UK that will have a counselor that is specializing in US applications. Yes, it does exist, especially if you're going to an independent or a boarding school. That happens a lot. So they'll know what's going on. But if you're in a school where you have a counselor that maybe has never seen a student apply to the US before, They can always contact me, first of all, really important to remember, super happy to help. It's really important for them to know that it's a very different process. And that comes through choosing who the referees are going to be. So I would say the student should really think about, okay, we're going to need the counselor recommendation, but we'll need also 1 to 2 teacher recommendations. So they'll have to choose a teacher that knows them well. And then being able to brief them as to what we expect from those recommendations. Because it's not about, wow, this student is taking my biology class. They're excellent because of these reasons. This is a project they did, and then explaining the project and their involvement. It's not about that whatsoever, even for the teacher evaluation. It is about who they are as a person. So the counselor and the teachers should know the student well enough in and outside of the classroom so that they're able to talk to us about their personalities. And it shouldn't be a copy paste of their CV. It's like, oh, they're involved in that many clubs. I'm like, yeah, I can see that from the rest of the application. It should be that you maybe heard a conversation they had with a classmate, and maybe they supported a classmate that was struggling. Okay, tell us about this. This is important that, you know, they're team members and they know how to work in a team and they support each other. Or it's about they had a struggle with a bad grade at some point, and this is everything that they did to get better as a person, as a human being. What did they do? So it's all about, again, this personality fit. And it's not easy, especially because in UK, we tend to not want to boast about ourselves and not talk about our feelings and who we are. You know, it's a different type of culture. And in the US, they're very open about, hey, I did this, I'm amazing. And you're like, okay, well,
you've got to show yourself
hard,
to be a really positive, active, interesting, original member of the community.
100%. 100%. And I think as a counselor, you need to go beyond this idea of, oh, they're a great student. Okay, then why and how? So it's using examples. I think is super useful. Even if they're tiny examples, minor little stories, anecdotes, we'll take that. And you also think about the vocabulary itself, because there's a very different feeling as a reader if you read XYZ is a great student and XYZ is the best student I've ever taught in my 30-year career. These are two very different statements. So be very careful to not go overboard, but to really tell us about what you feel about this student. And if it's something negative, I'm sorry to say, but that is actually okay. And it's difficult, it's pretty rare, but it happens that a teacher or a counselor would say, hey, this student is great for these reasons, but they also went through this, or they did that, and it's difficult for me to recommend them.
So again, this is absolutely fascinating.
It can happen.
This is so interesting. You're essentially saying that while the student essay's got to be really reflective, so has the referee's comments. They've got to be very reflective on the person rather than the subject.
Very much so, very much so. Because for us, we see the transcripts, we see the test scores if there are any. We see the biography, we see the CV, the details, all their extracurriculars. We get that part. We understand that, you know what, they've taken 4 A-levels and one of them is in physics and they have an A-star predicted. We get that. We don't need to dig into that a bit deeper because maybe they're not even going to study physics at NYU. So, you know, it's fine. We know they're smart. We know they're academically gifted. What we don't know is, are they going to cope at NYU? Are they right for our environment? Are they right for us? And can we help them? And so if we don't get that sense, it's difficult to make those decisions. And they do have a strong impact in the applications. Obviously, a great personality is not going to make up for very poor grades, let's face it. I mean, we have to be honest. But when we get a sense of the student, we know if they're applying to the right program, the right campus, the right school, and that really helps us make those decisions.
Very interesting, very interesting. Jamie, over to you.
No, that's great to hear. I mean, it sounds like students sometimes come to me and they're like not sure who they should be asking for references, and you know, they think about it kind of in the year 13 in their final year. And if I'm lucky enough to sort of mentor students from, you know, a few years before, I always encourage them to go above and beyond with the teachers in the subjects that they're really passionate about, but make time to see them outside of office hours, or to, you know, to do research outside of class and bring that up with them, so that when it comes time for that teacher to write a recommendation, they have something that about their, you know, their intellectual curiosity or their, you know, hunger for knowledge that will be, it's genuine and something to say. You kind of have to help them along. But I'm interested.
If I may just quickly, so I'm going to do another plug for the Meet NYU blog. It's not out yet, but within the next couple of months, so by the end of the summer, I'll have a blog post that is literally about how you can work with your counselors to put in a good application. So the steps you should take to create that relationship with the counselor. So go back to Meet NYU towards the end of the summer, and that should be up and running. And I think it gives you a few pointers, and especially if you're not used to working closely with the counselor as to how to address that.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic resource. And I'm just going to the Common App essay, because that's the thing that's going to be sent to every school, and it's not tailored to individual schools. It's sort of a reflection of you as a person. I'm interested from your personal experience, like what are the qualities that when you see them in an essay, I'm sure it's not like these are the three and there's nothing else, but what are the ones that sort of stick with you and you think, wow, this is going to be a student that is going to make the most of their education here?
Yeah, it's very difficult to answer because, again, 85,000 applications is 85,000 unique individuals that have slightly different variation of their own personality. So it's difficult to think that. But I think what we want to see in those essays is self-awareness. And that's strange because when you're 16, 17, 18, you don't really know who you are yet, right? So it's an exercise in understanding who you are. And actually it could be quite interesting for a student to do this. I always recommend that there's many tricks that you can find online and in my blog post as well about how to think about a subject for an essay, how to understand themselves a bit better. They can do lists, they can do Excel spreadsheet, they can talk to other people and get feedback. There's plenty of things you can do. But ultimately what we want to see is self-aware storytelling. Tell us a story. Tell us about something that's happened to you, so many different levels, so many different things. What happened, how you reacted in that situation, and what were the outcomes, what were the learnings? So one of my pet peeves when I read is that they tell me a story, but there's no ending. I'm like, okay, so I don't know if you succeeded, if you failed, I don't know what you learned from this. Like it just cuts. So always remember that if you're telling a story, it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's something important. And it has to be something that's happened to you. You know, we read a lot of tough essays. A lot of students apply talking about domestic abuse and illnesses and really difficult family situations and things that were very important to them because they kind of shape them into who they are. And I would say when you're choosing a topic for an essay, be very careful along those lines, because while you want to talk about things that were impactful in your life, it also has to be something that you came across on the other side and that happened to you, not something you observed. So you shouldn't be outside the bubble telling us about something else. It has to be something that you were a part of. If you are applying under the Common Application, they have 7 essay questions that they call prompts that you can use. So it's 6 questions, and the 7th is open. It's an open essay. I highly recommend choosing a prompt and sticking to it. Do not, this is a personal preference, do not choose the 7th prompt because chances are you're going to reuse an essay you wrote for something else and it's not going to fit what the Common Application is looking for. So especially if you're applying to UCAS as well, you're going to say, oh, I've got a great essay about history, I'm going to put it in there. It's not going to fit. So look at the 6 prompts. There are specific questions that ask you about things you want to change in the world, about a moment of realization, about a failure, about a success, about all sorts of different things. Choose one that fits a story you want to tell us and be honest, be genuine. Don't overuse a thesaurus or the dictionary. I don't want to see complicated words that mean nothing. I want to have your own voice, but I do want to see academic writing. It has to be good English. It has to be proofread by all means. Do not quote songs, do not quote Spider-Man or Harry Potter. Please, please do not do that. I see so many of those. It's words on a page, but it tells me nothing about you. I like Spider-Man as much as the next person, but that's not really helping me understand who you are. So tell us this story. Be genuine, be yourself. The best piece of advice I've heard about writing essays was actually given to me by a colleague a few years back, which was, when you've done your draft and you're really happy with it, show it to someone, but remove the question. If they can't tell you what the question was, you've done it wrong. If they can tell you roughly, oh yeah, you're talking about this is what I think the question was, you're on the right track, right? Because I think that you need to understand that it's not just verbal diarrhea. It has to have a construction, it has to be a story, and it has to answer that question. So if I read an essay that's just ramblings, it doesn't give me confidence that you're going to be able to cope in a structured classroom. So we still want to see that you understand the instructions and that you're following the instructions and you found a way to let your personality shine through those instructions. It's not easy. It takes time. Most people take weeks and weeks on end to write the essays. And you might even get help if you want, but don't get someone else to write the essays. They're them. Their personality is not who you are. And remember that fit is important to us. So if, in a sense, you misrepresent yourself through an application, we are going to enroll you based on false pretenses. And you probably won't be happy at NYU because that's not who you are. And if we don't get that at the application stage, then it's going to be too late. You want to make sure that the schools that choose you for who you are, not because of someone else's words.
Lisa, this is extremely useful. I'm sorry, we've only got a couple more minutes left. So, can I just ask, it's very much a reflective essay that has to come out here, but can one tell a story and be reflective about one's development of a particular intellectual curiosity in the subject?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a question, again, this is from memory, I think there is a question that talks about something like this. About it's about, tell us about something you're absolutely passionate about and you cannot live without, or cannot spend 5 minutes without thinking about. So that's absolutely possible. And for instance, if you wanted to study engineering and you're passionate about building robots and you want to be on Robot Wars or something, and you've done that, and you can tell a story about how you came through this. That's not about the engineering aspect of it, but it's more about, hey, I had to find a team, I had to find sponsorship, I had to find a budget, I did this, I did that, this is what I'm passionate about. And you tell us about who you are through that story. That's totally fine. It's perfectly okay within those parameters, but it shouldn't be about 3 paragraphs about how you built the robot, because that's not the point. This is not what we want to see. We want to see about how you reacted faced with something that you were proactive about because you are passionate about this specific subject or topic. And that could apply to many different things in life. So yeah, I think that's definitely
very, very helpful. Jamie, do you have a closing question that's going to solve the great riddle of American university admissions?
Oh gosh,
in 3 sentences?
I mean, I have specific questions about the application, but I mean, I think as a general one to end with, I'd be interested to get your sense, just what about, like, what kind of student, for those who are thinking about applying to American university, what kind of student do you think would really thrive in that environment, as opposed to maybe would do better? Because I don't think everyone should apply to US university, even though I'm very passionate.
Completely agree. By the way, I have a few minutes, so in case you wanted to go over, I'm fine with timings, but it's also for the audience. This is a tough question because remember that it's all about fit, and all American institutions are quite different from each other. So someone who would be very comfortable in a very small liberal arts college, mostly focused on humanities, in a very small town in the middle of Massachusetts, is a completely different person than someone who's going to thrive in an urban campus in Los Angeles, studying acting. These are different people. And so it's hard to say there's a unique type of student, but I would say they should share some traits, that they should be independent, because especially if the family is not in the US, they'll have to cope with a lot, to be displaced and to be in a different environment. People who are really, really willing to be proactive and challenge themselves. I come from the French educational system, and when I went to school, there was like 1 student club, maybe 2. We didn't do much outside of studying. But in the American system, you're very much expected to be super active on campus, outside of the classroom, outside of the academics, but also in the classroom, to raise your hand and talk and engage. And I think you need to be someone who is willing to challenge other people and be challenged themselves by this environment. And it's not for everyone. There are people that are super comfortable just reading from a book and learning through that. And that is okay. That is not what we'll be expecting, though, of an American type of education. I would also say that you probably would want someone who is, how should I put this, who is comfortable, I want to say, having difficult conversations. The US right now and the world itself is going through a lot of changes on many different levels. And I think that you have to be a little bit adventurous. You have to be a little bit open to tough discussions and open to see your mindset being changed by the experience. Because if you grew up, let's say, in Leicester, and you're going to the University of Leicester, and you work in Leicester your whole life, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you'll be within your own environment with people you know in a sense of comfort. Having to go to the US for schooling is a complex process in a country that is, undergoing a lot of changes at the moment. So you need to be comfortable with potentially having your own mindset being changed. And that's not for everyone. It's difficult. It's difficult, and it can be a strong learning curve, but that's how you grow as a person, and that's how you start seeing the world in different ways. And I think that's super exciting. Like, I spent 2 years in the US when I was younger, and I was both a student and a teacher on a US college at the time. And that changed my life. I wouldn't be where I am right now talking to you if I hadn't had this experience as a French girl from a small town. So this completely changed my life.
It's an all-consuming experience, isn't it, really, Lisa? It's not going into the lab at 9:30 and going home at 5 and then, it's a deep experience. Yeah.
It's a deep experience for sure, but it's something that really gives you so much more than just the academics and just the learning and just the expertise. It gives you a sense of yourself. It gives you maturity. It gives you new social skills, maybe new languages. It opens up your eyes on what's going on in the rest of the world. And I think that's unique. And of course, that applies to every study abroad experience you may have. But a lot of American schools are very lucky that we have a lot of international students that are interested. And so you will be around Americans, but you'll be around people from everywhere in the world. And that's also a super valuable experience, is to be within this context. So it's a 24/7 sort of experience for sure.
And the international colleges such as yourselves, they almost sort of override the fact that they're in the United States, as wonderful a country as it is. But
it's very different if you're studying in a small school in the heart of the Midwest and if you're studying in New York. That's a fact. There's nothing we can do about this. These are two valid experiences in their own right. They're just different experiences, and that's something that you need to be comfortable with. If you're passionate about American football, go to the University of Ohio. They have the best football stadium I've ever seen. You'll have that experience. Go to Notre Dame, go to Duke, don't go to NYU. Like, you can play football, but no, you can't because we don't have a football team. So, these are important things to remember. They're very different experiences. But it's true that being in the heart of New York, you are integrated within the New York experience. So if you're comfortable with that, then that's super cool.
Lisa, I think we're going to sadly have to wrap this up now. I mean, this has been the most useful discussion about the culture and nature of American applications I think I've ever had. So
thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Jamie as well. And if you do want to get in touch with us, bonus.MacFarlane.co.uk, you know where to find us. And thank you very much for joining us. And particular thanks to Lisa for your time this morning.
Thanks so
really
much.
Grateful.
Thank you, everyone. I hope this was helpful, and feel free to send me an email. Bye.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay.